All right. Cool.
So,
All right.
Jake, please,
Thank you very much. Am I sharing right now? I don't think I am.
not yet.
I'll go ahead and do that. All right. Everyone able to see where we're at right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, looks great.
All right. Cool. So, my name is Jake. I am the head of customer over at Peak Mojo, a company that I am helping co-found. We've been actually up and running for about 8, 9 months now, so it's been pretty short-lived at this point in time. However, we are in this stage, and this is obviously what, one of the important parts to try to figure out, try to identify those first customers. A bit more on my history. The last few years, it's about 2022, I've been working on my own firm, which is just a startup advising firm to help customers try to, those early stage startups try to identify, customer centric models and understand customer success and customer support, as that is what I did over at CrowdStrike. So CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company, pretty large globally, and you probably heard of them back in July if you've never heard them before then, because they took down the world. But anyway, I started over there as an early employee, worked there for roughly 8 years through their IPO in 2019, building out their post-sales organizations, starting with customer support and then moving into customer success and assisting the global expansion of that team. And I did a bunch of other work prior to even that, but it's a little less relevant. So I'm excited for the opportunity to talk today. And just in the breakout rooms earlier, we had some good, beginning conversations of the different projects and levels of experience of everyone. So, I'm really just going to kind of fly through because nobody really likes to look at just a slide deck, but I really want to get into, the conversation of it all, understand what all of us are working and methodologies that we've all sort of tried in the past, because this is not necessarily a science. It is, getting to know people and building up trust. And that's largely what we're going to be talking about today. Uh, See if I can actually make this thing move forward or not. There we go. No, yep. I went ahead and blew through that, but that's me. All right. Hold on one second here. This is what we're going to be talking about. These, call them steps, if you will, but just, different things of what we want to kind of go through. So these are largely what we're going through. And then again, if anyone wants the slide deck when we're done, happy to send it out. Again, that's me talking about what I've been going on. I sort of just flew through that already. All right. So first things first, as we're starting a business or we're trying to expand our business in different ways, this is the very first thing that we should already be kind of thinking of, right? What methodology you're actually going to be selling. Because when you're ultimately, running your business and you've gone to business, that's going to differentiate how you're actually doing your outreach, your advertising, and all of that other fun stuff. This is common sense stuff. However, regardless of the different business or industries, it really is a similar approach to finding those initial customers. And as you're kind of building up your brand, one of the more important things that you want to be building up is actually trust in yourself, trust in your technology, trust in your service, that you know what you're actually talking about. And you can actually provide that appropriate value when the time comes to collect money from the customer. Really, when you're getting out there, you're going to be wanting to focus mostly on the problem that your business is going out to solve. So we're going to be talking a lot about networking, partnering with different groups, and building out what you believe to be your ideal customer profile. And in order to do that, you're mostly talking about the problem that you're attempting to solve. So you're having these conversations with your network. You're going to be saying, you're I don't even you need to wake up more. You here have this energy drink. You're going to be talking to the customer about whatever your idea is, or not necessarily your idea, but the problem that your idea solves, if that makes sense. You're going to want to, as you're going out, you'll be continually, wanting to discuss and the actual issue that you're looking for. And this is the method that I actively use, both for my own business as well as obviously Peak Mojo, and just different methods for expanding out the network and expanding your bubble. the initial customers are largely going to be those that are early adopters. Maybe they are, helping you as a design partner. So you are going to be looking for those individuals and planting yourself where you believe your customers actually reside. And those customers are the people who have the actual problem that you're solving. So there's a lot of different places that you can go, and many of them are free. And it does take a lot of energy and effort on our parts as either founders or parts of the beginning sales teams to get out there and to sort of put yourself into the world, expanding out your network to try to identify individuals or partnerships that you will be able to continue to expand and grow. So we talk about nonprofits and things like that. Those have very little funding often and do require expanding out your customer base with little to no investment. But as you're doing this, and as we're talking here, expanding your network out is extraordinarily important. I have found, when I started my business, moving into like the meetup groups, you will end up meeting somebody who has a good idea. You're able to, standard networking. You're able to then get invited to, meet with somebody else who will introduce you to somebody else. The basic situation. And again, I have in here talking about your problem, not your solution. This is important because if you start talking about your solution prior to actually discussing how they're actually solving the problem today, you often just get feedback on your solution. You don't get the extra insight that you would need of how they're actively solving the issue. So they may have a competitor out there that you never even really thought of. Or, you may not have the appropriate discussion of that point when you're actually going out there. Talking about feedback for your MVP, that is also this is largely what you should be doing in this scenario. And just asking for them to go ahead and utilize your MVP or your service, or just to gather that continued feedback. So you're constantly going out and looking for building out your feedback loop. So as you're getting this data, you hopefully your networking and your effort and energy of putting yourself and just sort of introducing yourself, you will be able to start get early adopters to your product. And these early adopters, you need to hopefully have a decent cadence of how much or of how frequently you should be talking with them to gather that feedback to then integrate back into your actual product. So you'll just continually do this for the entire life of your company for all intents and purposes. You should be constantly getting that feedback from your customers and then building it into your product as you move along. This is largely what you're going to be doing to hone out your ICP in these initial stages, and this feedback will likely lead to a lot of pivoting or what have you with your idea, with your solution, how you're actually going to make it to your go-to-market before you actually are turning on and hopefully, collecting income for this idea, right? For this solution. This is a basic customer success process. If you're not familiar, it's really not too difficult. You did your networking, you got your connection, you got them to agree to give you early feedback. You start gathering that feedback at a cadence that they expect you to reach out to them, both for what you need and for what they are able to provide to you. At this point in time, you just continually iterate that back into your MVP or service and grow it out, much like you would a roadmap for product management. And then finally, you're going to be turning on your paywall. Now, early adopters, as you're sort of doing this at this point in time, you should have already sort of narrowed down what this actual customer would look like, what industry they're in, what level of, executive or manager or individual contributor that you would be actually reaching out to, and actually who are the decision makers in this process. Those are who your ideal customer profile actually are. This is helping you build out all of those numbers as you're getting ready to build out your pitch deck to talk to your venture capitalist, your angel funders, or just to bootstrap your own business. These are the people that you will need to continually implant yourself in to continually get those early adopters and develop that process as you're moving forward. Obviously, as you turn on the paywall, anyone who was using your product in those early stages, that is a decision that you would be making as you go to market. Are you continually providing them that free service or severely discounted service? This is obviously a decision that you would need to make with you and your team to determine how that will look moving forward. But turning on the paywall also implies that new customers coming on will be actually paying for whatever your product is offering. And then obviously what we're trying to actually take away here, you need to understand your business model and your target audience. Again, doing this is kind of important to, as you're sort of developing your overall processes and feedback loops, that can help shape and model that within the first several weeks, months, depending on how long that process actually takes you. Network relentlessly to find early adopters. Again, finding those places who have the problem that you're trying to solve. You're trying to sell a sales tool, go sit with salespeople. You're trying to sell an HR tool, go find HR conferences and meetup groups and channel, Discord servers, Slack, whatever. Go just relentlessly go put yourself into these scenarios, start taking, anyone who will listen, start talking to you, get them to be using your product, your service, whatever you need. Build those feedback loops, obviously refine your product, make sure that they're continually being integrated into the tool, into the service, and then transition to paying customers when time is right. A lot of this is like, oh my God, this is obvious. This is, second nature is what I already do, which is great, but there's some areas that we can probably, again, further discuss and hopefully learn from each other. And I did plow through 3 minutes early, but this is where I want to kind of stop and open it up to the larger group. I want to discuss, what are some ideas that you currently have? What are some challenges with some of this sort of model? And those of you who have been doing marketing for a much, much longer time than maybe even I have, we would like to hear from you as well. So we can sort of discuss some of these approaches and some maybe success or even failures that you've had in similar approaches.
Jake, this was awesome. Thank you so much for the presentation. I threw a question in the chat. If everybody else has questions that they would like to have Jake address or the group discuss, you can throw them in the chat as well. The question I posed to you was around the events and kind of the in-person networking that you suggested.
Yeah.
How were you finding those, or how would you suggest finding those? Do you have any tools? Maddie came back and answered with how they do it at CMO Zen, but would love to get your take on that.
Yeah, so largely again, just thinking about the actual issue that's attempting to be solved. So in my own personal work, as well as any other startup that I've advised, we just simply focus on the issue in hand. What is the actual problem that's having, and who is having that problem? Who do we think, are the ones who likely are having this biggest issue? So again, for sales, I go and look for conferences, sales trainings out there, different avenues of that, starting with the more free, because that's the idea. We're trying to do this with little to no budget at all. So we need to get a little bit creative, offering, those groups already exist, and there's a lot of people putting out that content there. So searching for things like sales conferences or what have you within Meetup or within Eventbrite or Fiverr. I think there's a lot of other areas as well, that you can try to find these local events in your area, and sort of sit in there and identify it. The more lucrative ones are some of the more online areas. The problem is there are sometimes thousands of people in a networking group, and maybe like a dozen are active. It is a lot to stay active in all of the different groups that you might find yourself in. So yeah, it's trying to find the right ones at the right time and just participate.
It looks like a couple of others have come in the chat. One suggestion BJ was around SCORE, business mentors, SBDC, networking. I think those are great suggestions. Troy, do you want to, looks like you put a question in the chat. if you would like, you can come off mute and add any context. But Jake, it says early on pricing can
Yeah.
be hard. How can we go about dialing that in quickly?
Yeah. Depending on what you're actually building, you'll need to be having a pretty comprehensive competitive analysis, and you'll find those early pricing around what they offer. Hopefully, you can identify that. And then you can determine what your pricing should be based on your closest competitors. Then, as you have these early adopters and these beta users or whatever that process is that you have for your early validation, you can ask them that question as well. If I were to charge $200 a month, would you like that? Or whatever the verbiage is for the actual question. But you have all of these free users, ask them how much they would pay, right? Oh, you used to do this on Excel for free, but it took you 5 days. I went ahead and easied that up for you. Now it takes 5 minutes. How much are you willing to save 5 days of time? Right. And you can start asking this sort of question, and that can help you kind of like narrow in on what your pricing will actually be in your pricing model when you actually go to market.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah. And I see Score Business Mentors SBDC for networking. Yeah. So those are other areas. I participate in Upwork, which is or not Upwork. I do Upwork as well. Sorry, that was something else. I already forgot the name of it. I haven't done it in a minute. Upnot, that's what it was. Sorry. That's another good area to find like-minded people to get mentoring or whatever. And sometimes you can find some free advising or free advice in some of these places too.
Jake, what are you seeing as the biggest mistakes that people are making as they go through those 4 steps that you had on the last slide?
Sure. One, and I have failed on this as well, is just continually staying active in the areas that you're attempting to drum up your business and just staying relevant. It is exhausting to network, and a lot of times you're like, I'm not seeing the payoff. Like I'm spending hours every evening of my life going out and trying to do all of this stuff, and I see the needle's not moving. Um, and it will burn you out and wear you out. So my advice, like that will make it so you just stop doing it altogether. I'm just going to sit on the couch for the next few nights, but those nights that you're not actively going out, you're potentially missing out on that person who will pay you $100,000 for your service, right? You never know. So my advice would be to stay active in your networking and don't burn yourself out in doing it, because then you will stop. Yeah, that would be part of the bigger one. And then investing in tools and like AI programs, which is fantastic. You absolutely need AI in your prospecting and your initial outreach, but making it a bit too relying too heavily on that stuff and removing that human factor of, especially when you're attempting to build out trust in the beginning, you need to have that human touch in there. People want to know that they're actually speaking to the person that is going to be able to help them or be able to answer their questions. And this goes for the life of the product in your company. You need to make that decision as you move forward. But in these initial stages, it is literally trust. You just need to get them to talk to you and to believe what you're trying to say. And hopefully you're telling the truth, but that's what you're attempting to do there.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned staying active in networking. It can be draining. I shared these 2 things in the chat. These are, I did it before, but I don't think everybody was here. This is the breakdown of people in this group, the Midday Connect group, both by their title and then the industry. So we've got just over, like you said, just over about 1,000 in the Midday Connect. And this is the breakdown that we look at to try and say, okay, who can we bring in as a speaker, or what value can we bring to these people? Just thought that was an interesting anecdote as you were talking about that. Again, you can throw your questions in the chat here. I did want to drill in a little bit on what you just said, Jake, about tools. Do you have a list of software or tools that you use or that you would suggest to people that they start using to go through the 4 steps you presented on?
Sure. So, I mean, the tooling does get a little expensive, you know, and if you're not maximizing what you're investing in, you end up with like three things, buying three things that are doing just slightly different things, right? So I can't think of, I mean, there's obviously LinkedIn, love it or hate it, it's kind of a necessary it's kind of a necessary evil. I think platforms like LinkedIn can be helpful in the simple fact that they make connections very easy in different methods to reach out to them. Um, there are also a lot of plugins and extensions and things like that that work exclusively with LinkedIn to help you, and such as like Sales Navigator, for example. It is a pretty powerful search tool to help you narrow in on your ICP. You can go ahead and build out those customer lists and then convert them into connection lists or things like that. It can get a little spammy as you're trying to do this, but it's kind of a necessary evil to grow out your network. And then people do reference LinkedIn regularly, right? You put that on your content as it goes out. Your company is going to have a LinkedIn page. You're going to have one, hopefully pretty well and deep, in your network. You should have quite a few people. You don't necessarily need to be a LinkedIn lunatic and be posting crazy stuff out there, but or even any content at all. But it does help to have a pretty robust network out there. Using other methods, I mean, LinkedIn is helpful. So you're trying to, maybe you solve a problem that somebody is looking to hire somebody for. So, for example, in sales enablement, I use LinkedIn Navigator to look for people who are by title sales enablement, or they're looking for, like, a company is looking for a person who does sales enablement. So now I have like, all right, well, this company is a potential for my product. I can go ahead and use that in a different method to kind of start reaching out to them and build that connection and try to just get on the phone with them is the idea. Um, Other tools, I mean, there's plenty of other networking tools out there and organization tools. I've been using the org.com. Is it org.org? Actually, no, I think it's the org.com. They offer like hierarchy and kind of help you get in touch with the right person, hopefully that you could talk to. There's Crunchbase and things like that, though that's not necessarily accurate information. I know I was talking with somebody earlier during the networking. We talked about, trying to find the company at the right stage. And Crunchbase has like funding information and things like that to kind of help you identify some of those things. And it can be helpful trying to find the right stage. However, many of that stuff starts to get aged out because it is only updated by the founder. So it is reliable as humans entering the information. Getting yourself into a CRM fairly quickly using, they link pretty well with things like LinkedIn or other tools. So we talk about like Apollo. I've used that for outreach quite a bit. It's pretty helpful. You can automate your outreach or make it connect to your CRM like HubSpot or whatever, and that can help you kind of validate your leads and opportunities as they kind of move through the sales cycle. And I mean,
Very
there's
cool.
there's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Just wanted to
yes.
get your take on that. I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. I think
Mhm.
some of you heard me um, stumble over myself with Maddie at the beginning. I saw a post of hers that actually gave me a bad dream. I just put it in the chat. And that was the bad dream that I was looking at, was because I'm not great with heights, but Maddie posted about that. And so it helped me relive some of my fears. Sonia asked, how well do you think platforms like LinkedIn help to close a client?
Um, it is definitely helpful in the initial stages for the simple fact that, like I said, you're helping to build that trust. You're trying to help build that those connections. Um, to close a client, I mean, I don't see why it would make that much of a difference depending on what you're actually closing. Are you closing just your beta, offering, your early adopter? Definitely, I think it could be helpful. And then, yeah, I, I feel it would be very, very good, in my
Okay.
opinion.
David, do you want to come off mute and give some context to your question?
Sure. Thanks. So Jake, in the early stages of a company, right? I mean, when you're still kind of like dialing in your product, your service, there's that balance when you're out there networking and talking to prospective customers where you want the feedback so it can
Mhm.
inform your product development, but you also don't want to scare them away from being a customer, right?
Right.
By like, exposing too much. So how do you find that balance between um, how much transparency you share
Sure.
with a prospective customer so that you get the good feedback but not scare them away.
Right. So I think you need to sort of allow yourself the opportunity to be brutally honest with some, and some you sort of say, yes, I could solve your problem, and don't tell them how much bubblegum and string is holding your product together, in your service. Uh, the ones, this will largely be within that connection that you're going to be making. Why I personally feel that human connection is pretty vital, because you're going to be able to read that person a lot better than them just responding to an AI or some AI delivered message, right? Um, so as you're doing it, you'll also know, scope of product. Am I talking to somebody that I would love their feedback, but I am one person. There's only three of us or whatever. There's no way I would actually be able to properly service this customer if they actually were a customer. I have 50,000 licenses. That would be a dream come true if I was able to land this deal. But you also have to, tell yourself, like, this is somebody that I wouldn't be able to properly deliver value with just the three of us. I need to either be funded or what have you. So you'll need to sort of ask that question as you're going through. And if you do end up in a conversation with, say, an enterprise level customer and you're just not ready for it, I mean, I mean, again, depending on your relationship with that person, you'll determine how much you would actually tell them. So an example that I have a lot of connections still over at CrowdStrike. I worked there for, again, 8 some odd years. And many of the very high level sales reps over there are friends. Like, I've known them for 8 years. So I talked to them, and they're actually helping me as a design partner for, like, all right, well, eventually we'll have this in an enterprise level solution, but you guys are willing to sit down and look at the product with me once a month and tell me how it works and if your team would actually use this. So they're fully aware of what's happening and what, I'm attempting to get from them because of the relationship that I have, and they trust me and not trying to gouge them or whatever. Um, there's gonna be a moment in time where you have to sort of take the leap and divulge a bit less information and just, support it and just make sure it works and what you're actually telling them it'll do. And that's the scarier part, I would assume, or not assume. It definitely is a scarier part to start having to live up to what you're promising.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure. We have a company that's in that same space. And David, one of the things that we're doing is my partner Spencer runs kind of a boot camp internally where over a 4 to 8 week period, we're going out and doing just informational interviews with people to try and get that feedback. They're obviously the target ICP, but it is nice to be able to start off the conversation initially by saying, hey, I'm not selling you anything. I just am wondering if you could give me some feedback. And oftentimes they will turn into eventual customers, but it is a little bit softer approach there at the beginning.
Yeah. It sweat equity, it's sweat labor. You're trying to help, gain their trust and get them to help you drive their product. Oftentimes they will turn into an actual customer. So it's a long game. And at the same time, you don't want to be running a proof of concept for 3 years and, you know, investing resources and time and energy and all of that fun stuff for one customer. So
Yeah. We're a quarter to the hour, so perfect timing. This is usually when we close up shop. So Jake, if people have additional questions for you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, let me where's my presentation? I have my link to my profile, all that fun stuff. Right. Here, I guess. That's fine. I'll just put it on this mode one more time. Present everything because it is here. There, right there. You can scan that. There's my LinkedIn, a couple email addresses, websites, all the fun.
Very cool. We'll give people some time to copy that down. But Jake, thank you so much for the presentation and your time today.
Of course.
Thanks everybody for coming. We look forward to seeing you next week as well. I think next week is a combination between a group here, a networking group and community group, BioHive and Midday Connect. So we'll be talking a little bit about AI in the healthcare space and have a doctor from University of Utah and the VA talking about his experience for next week. So look forward to seeing you all. And thanks again for your time. And thanks for the presentation, Jake.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We'll see you all next week.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Jake.